We are now in the official final sprint, literally, to the November 5th election. And the candidates are crisscrossing one another all over the country, making their final pitch to voters. And although I think it's pretty clear that we have a pretty good idea of where the major candidates at least stand on the issues, there are certainly still some moments in the campaign that gives us fresh glimpses that help clarify the worldview of the candidates. And we saw a few of those examples this week. And to break down some of those from a biblical worldview perspective, I'm, as always, on Fridays, glad to be joined by David Closson. He's the director of FRC's Center for Biblical Worldview. David, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always good to have you on Friday.
No, great to be with you. Thank you, Jody.
All right. Look, before we get going, I know you are yet again on the road speaking at one of FRC's Worldview workshops. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're actually in between sessions right now. I hope you're not missing a session. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thankfully, Joseph back home is teaching right now, Jody. We're just about an hour outside of Columbus, Ohio. We were in Pittsburgh yesterday, and it's just a joy to kind of take our Worldview workshop on the road. We have about 50 pastors from the area, and Joseph and I, we each give 4 lectures on worldview and how that deals with issues related to life and sexuality and marriage and transgenderism and critical theory, and just to be able to preach and teach and kind of equip these ministry leaders to do that in their own local context. And so, again, it's just a joy to be able to be on the road and learn how the Lord is just at work all over the country.
Well, and it's exciting for us at FRC to see reports and people making comments and writing us, telling us how powerful those workshops are. So, hats off to you. Y'all just keep the torch ablaze. All right, let's transition if we can. Earlier this week, Vice President Kamala Harris, sat down with NBC's Haley Jackson for a pretty wide-ranging interview. But here we are at this point in the campaign. I think Americans obviously know that Kamala Harris is running literally on a pro-abortion platform, but she went a little bit even further than that this week in that particular interview, and I want to get your reaction. Let me first play this little clip and then see what you have to say about it. Clip 4, please.
If you win, it is entirely possible that Congress will be controlled by Republicans. So what specific concessions would you be willing to make in order to get something done on abortion access as soon as possible?
Well, first of all, look at what has happened since the Dobbs decision came down, a decision that is a direct result of the fact that Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention they would undo the protections of Roe. They did as he intended, and now in 20 states we have Trump abortion bans, which some make no exception for rape or incest.
Wow. All right, give me your reaction.
Yeah, it's just, you're right, Jody. If you don't know that is kind of the sole issue that Kamala Harris has been running on since she, kind of took the nominee position from Joe Biden, well, you've been living under a rock. This really is the only issue that she has been consistent and clear and energetic. Even today, she joined forces with Beyonce to do a rally in Texas where pretty much, Jody, the main issue that they campaigned on is abortion. And I think we just need to be really clear as Christians. 8 years ago in 2016, Hillary Clinton became the first nominee to come out publicly and say she would be in favor of getting rid of the Hyde Amendment. And I think rightfully when that happened 8 years ago, we were all outraged. We need to realize that Hillary Clinton's position on abortion looks tame in comparison to the Harris-Walz ticket. They are the most ardent, energetic supporters, Jody, to ever run for president and vice president of the United States.
Yeah, it's stunning. Like you said, literally having an abortion rally today in Houston. It's like, is there no other issue that she is concerned about as we're watching literally the world virtually fall apart? Our borders just wide open, crime soaring, the economy hurting. It's stunning that this is really the one and only main issue. But let me just say, to Haley Jackson's credit, you don't usually see this. You don't typically see anyone in the mainstream media push back on an answer, particularly when there's a left-wing candidate like this. But to her credit, Haley Jackson pushed back with a follow-up. Again, let me get this clip 3. Let's play this.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example? Is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
Whoa, that's pretty big. All right, how do you respond to that one?
Well, Jody, that's a bombshell. And again, credit to the anchor for actually following up and for her to say no concessions. And then the reporter said, well, what about religious exemptions? And what does that practically look like, Jody? Well, that could be a Christian doctor or a Muslim nurse or a Jewish physician assistant who, they're in a hospital or a medical facility, and because of their faith, that they cannot go forward and partake in an abortion. This happens, Jody. And what Kamala Harris is saying is that even religious liberty claims, that is not important. Abortion is the sole right. And what's interesting, Jody, in this country, we actually in our First Amendment say that religious freedom is our first freedom. And yet, clearly, according to Kamala Harris, even our first freedom is not as important as the sacrament of abortion. And I think we need to realize that abortion has been elevated to this almost quasi-religious position in the modern-day Democratic Party, Jody. And again, we've kind of already known this about Kamala Harris. When she was a senator, she voted against the Pain Capable Act that would have provided protections for babies when they can feel pain. She voted against a piece of legislation that would provide legal protections for babies who survive botched abortions. So to her credit, in one sense, she's been consistent. But my goodness, Jody, that interview, that should send chills down the spine of every Christian to realize that if Harris is in the Oval Office on January 20th, the abortion lobby will have the most energetic supporter that they have ever had.
Yeah, and it really is. I think that's a good description. It should send chills up the spine of everyone, whether you are pro-life or not. The fact that she would come out saying there should be no concessions, that no one, even with religious convictions, should be allowed to hold their view and not participate in the abortion industry and whatever it may be, whatever category. No concessions for that. That means it would be a crime in her eyes, I'm assuming, for anyone to violate. And where does it stop? Abortion now. Later, if the First Amendment is going to be tossed out now over abortion, there will be other issues to come ahead where the First Amendment no longer would apply and religious liberties would no longer apply. Is that an accurate potential possibility of where this could go?
Well, Jody, it's not hypothetical. Democrats in Congress and Kamala Harris on this campaign, they're in full support of legislation known as the Equality Act that would prioritize these contested claims of sexual orientation and gender identity. We've mentioned this before on the broadcast, Jody. This is a piece of legislation when you were a congressman, you voted against this because this is legislation that specifically carves out these claims of sexual orientation, gender identity. Whenever they come into conflict with a religious liberty claim, guess what wins? It's the sexual orientation, the gender identity claims. And so absolutely, you see the left. And again, this used to be an issue we could all agree on, Jody, that people should be free to believe what they want to in terms of doctrine and theology and have the freedom to order their lives according to their deepest convictions. This is as American as apple pie. And yet the modern left is raising abortion and the LGBT revolution over religious freedom. And this is not going to end well for our country, Jody.
No, it's certainly not. It's certainly not. And, another issue that, look, 10 years ago, less probably, most people have never heard of and certainly had never thought of. But in this same interview, another issue came up, and that is on the topic of transgenderism. Of course, this is an issue that both sides have been speaking of. Former President Trump has been pounding her on this, literally. But I want to play yet one more clip and get your reaction as to how the vice president answered this question about what the left refers to as gender-affirming care. Clip 5,
a question
please.
Of your beliefs, what you believe in. Let me ask you this question, very broadly speaking here.
Sure.
Do you believe that transgender Americans should have access to gender-affirming care in this country?
I believe we should follow the law. I mean, I think you're probably pointing to the fact that Donald Trump's campaign has spent tens of millions of dollars.
They're trying to define you on this.
Yes,
I'm asking you to define yourself, though. Just broadly speaking, what is your value? Do you believe they should have that access?
I believe that people, as the law states, even on this issue about federal law, that is a decision that doctors will make in terms of what is medically necessary. I'm not going to put myself in the position of a doctor.
I will move on, but I don't know that I heard a clear answer from you on the issue of gender-affirming care.
Yeah. All right. Give me your reaction to that one.
Well, that NBC reporter is going to be in the doghouse, I think, for asking these follow-up questions, because you just don't see this. But Jody, that again is so revealing. We know, and again, let's just be clear, gender-affirming care, that is a euphemism. What does gender-affirming care actually mean? This refers to cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and actual physical surgeries. This is chemical castration. And specifically, this is happening on minor children. And the left says it's not. It clearly is, which is why they oppose efforts to try to make it illegal for minor children. But it's just so interesting to me. Kamala Harris is totally in favor of this. We know she is. In 2019, when she filled out a questionnaire for the ACLU, she said she was totally on board with this. In fact, she thinks taxpayers should support it. She thinks illegal immigrants and prisoners should get these type of treatments. Kudos to President Trump for bringing this issue up in the campaign. And I think Kamala Harris realizes this position is totally not popular with the American people. The vast majority of Americans do not believe in so-called gender-affirming care. And so, again, what do you see Kamala Harris doing there? You see a word salad, Jody, which, she's become really good at these just word salads because she's trying to deflect. And I understand why she's trying to deflect. This is a position that's not popular with American people, but make no mistake about it, she is all in on this. She was as an attorney general, she was as a U.S. senator, and she has been as a vice president, and she will be if she's elected president of the United States.
Yeah, it's really frightening how many of these issues directly oppose biblical teaching, and they're entrenched in embracing those things. Staying on the topic of the election, we've all been talking a lot about a recent George Barna survey that's gotten a lot of attention. But basically, the data is showing that the trend, at least, is that some 32 to 40 million self-identified Christians who regularly attend church are not going to be casting a ballot this year. What's your response to that?
Well, my response is I think that's a dereliction of our duty as Christians. And for any pastor, any ministry leader that's listening to this conversation, who's reading George Barna's survey, two principles, Jody, and we've talked about these before. As Christians, why do we care about politics? Why do we need to be out there voting? One, a love of neighbor. We love our neighbors as Christians, and can you say that you comprehensively love your neighbor if you're not engaging in the process that affects our basic rights and liberties and our freedoms? And stewardship, Jody. All of us have heard, if we've grown up in church, heard sermons on that we need to be good stewards of our time and our money. For those of us who live in a constitutional republic, God calls us to be faithful stewards of everything He's entrusted us with. And I think for those of us, again, who live in the United States in 11 days with this election, we need to be good stewards of our vote. And I think we just need to make sure that our Christian friends and neighbors understand the stakes, Jody, because there are issues of clear biblical morality on the ballot: abortion, sexuality, marriage, a host of other issues. And my prayer, Jody, is that this survey that George put out actually has the effect of motivating Christians to turn out, because, again, out of love of neighbor and out of good stewardship, we need to be engaging.
Absolutely. Listen, David, always great to have you on. We've got less than about a minute or so, but real quickly, 2 more Sundays before the election. What would you say to pastors when it comes to navigating the next couple of Sundays?
Yeah, those 2 principles are a great place to start. Preach love of neighbor, preach stewardship. I think it's good to use your pastoral prayer to pray for the issue, to pray for the candidates, to pray for the elections. At FRC Action, Jody, we have 501c3 voter guides that I think pastors should order and make sure they're there in your church lobby. Let's pray. Let's lead our people in praying. But again, I think let's help our people realize this is one way we love our neighbor, one way we honor God with what He's given us by engaging on the election.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not sure where your pastor is, ask. I know our pastor this Sunday is going to be dealing with things because some of us have gone to him and shared a lot of stuff, and he's going to be coming out and sharing some biblical principles. And listen, that's a good thing, to just ask where your pastor stands. David Closson, always great to have you. You better get back to your session in there, but thank you so much, as always, for joining us.
Thank you, Jody. God bless.